No, go.
We are going. Do you want me to restart?
This is BOBcast.
BuffaloBrotherhood.com.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to BOBcast, episode 73. This is the Buffalo Brotherhood's audio podcast, a video podcast for watching on YouTube. I am Ryan, alongside me as always,
Mike.
And across the table,
Doug.
And a very special guest returning from last week is Jeff Spider something. I totally forgot.
Yeah, it's all right.
Jeff the Spider with a Y.
There you go.
All right. And I'm actually incredibly stoked for this show because this is a show that made it our very first sort of like topic list. We were like, what are the things we could talk about and so forth? And this is a show that we talked about. We're going to talk about fishing tonight. And it is something that I've done my whole entire life. It was something that was very, I guess, encouraged at home. My dad had aspirations of being like a BASS professional angler.
Huh.
And it was some of our very, like, my earliest childhood memories are being trapped in the bottom of an old Monarch boat.
I don't understand why you spelled that.
Because that's how you say the organization.
Oh.
The BASS
Okay.
organization.
I was like, he fishes for bass? He's a bass angler? Like, why are we spelling it?
That's the professional body. But
Okay.
yeah, he used to have an old Monarch with the Johnson on the back with the stick steering column, you know. I just remember being trapped in the back on that blue carpet for more hours than I care to count until I sort of figured out my own fishing meta, you know, how I was going to fish. And
Wow, nice use of the word, man.
No
His
problem.
own fishing meta.
But
Nice, bro.
But I mean, I had to sort of learn how I was going to do it and how I was going to spend that time. And fishing is one of those things that honestly I would do more of.
Yeah.
If sort of time allowed or schedules allowed or finances allowed or family sort of allowed.
Or your survival depended on it?
Or my survival would 2 minutes and 36 seconds before the preppers come out.
No, fishing is the most popular sport in the world.
Because
The most widely engaged in.
I was sort of teasing my wife about it a little bit. It's probably one of the few sports that you could do all day and never break a sweat on. Right?
Right.
You can never break a sweat. I mean, unless it's really hot outside, I guess. But fishing is interesting because it is defined by the tackle that you use. You could be fly fishing. You could be ice fishing. You could be spinning. You could do bait casting. It's defined by the bait that you use. Again, fly fishing, live bait fishing, artificial.
Mm-hmm.
It can be
Virtual.
defined by the season. Again, like ice fishing or it could be determined by the body of water you're fishing in,
Right.
lakes, ponds, moving water, rivers, reservoirs, salt water, fresh water, depending on. So there's lots and lots and lots of different types and kinds and subtopics, and
It's deep.
it's deep when it
And
comes
wide.
to fishing. Yeah, absolutely. Doug, you're doing great, bud. You're jumping right in all the right spots.
I'm just saying. It's
I know,
deep and
right?
wide.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. But so don't expect the show here tonight that's going to tell you exactly how to fish in every possible circumstance. I don't think.
So we're not going to practice tying a proper knot.
I could visually sort of explain it to you, and I'm sure Jeff has fished all his life or most of his life, right?
Yeah.
And,
Since
and
I was a young kid.
I've fished
Yeah.
most of my life, and Doug's fished some, and Mike's fished some. I bet we all four of us.
Barely.
Oh, more than some.
I bet we all tie different knots when we
Barely. Let me
go to
put
the hook on.
it this way. If it's a big enough fish and it lands in my hand, I'm still going to jump when it starts moving around in my hand. That's how little I have fished.
All right.
Because I'm not prepared for how it's going to move. You know what I'm saying?
And they move.
I cooked
They
a
do.
great salmon fillet, though, the other day.
That you caught?
No.
Oh.
I mean, it was $5 on sale at Marsh. Couldn't
So
beat it.
you
Pound
kinda-
of salmon for $5.
Kind of caught it then, I guess.
Yeah, that's decent. Yeah.
Caught the sale.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
So
I'm not going to have a whole lot to put into this conversation.
Well, let's dive right in.
Well, I just kind of wanted to just give some backstory here about the type of fishing maybe we've done or that we can do. I've spent a lot of time pond fishing. We've done a lot of river fishing.
Right.
My brother, and my dad both went sort of similar paths when they go fishing. They both went bait casters, artificial baits, larger, more stagnant bodies of water. Around here is reservoirs, sort of
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
I enjoyed fishing as well, but I always have tried to do things slightly, maybe a step to the left of what they're doing. So, like, I got into fly fishing, and then my brother and I would hit rivers, and he would take a small spinning reel, and I'd take my fly fishing pole, and we'd have a good time. I've used that fly fishing pole on farm ponds, the reservoirs, and so forth. But, but honestly, you can't beat just the convenience of a decent spinning rod.
There's a reason why
Right.
they're
So popular.
Yeah.
You can't beat the convenience of a nice spinning rod, spinning reel on a big on like a 6.5 foot spinning rod. You can use it anywhere.
anywhere.
Use it anywhere. So, I remember when I was in 6th grade, I had hepatitis. Not the Pamela Anderson version, but just the liver disease.
Yeah.
And one
curable now.
And one of the
That's a weird reference.
one of the memories of that I still have to this day of getting better is my dad saying, "All right, you're well enough, let's go." But I'm like, I still can't go to school. He's like, "Okay, we're going anyway," and we drive like 2 hours north to Loon Lake and went muskie fishing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that was a good time, But mostly just bass, mostly
Muskie
just
fishing.
panfish. Yep.
Now they say with muskies, you have to cast 10,000 times before you catch a muskie.
We caught 2 that day.
That's
So,
good.
Thankfully, they were on cast number 9,972.
And then
Maybe
on
it's for a
one
trophy
of the next one.
You know?
Maybe. Well, I will say
10,000
I will
times?
say
I don't
it's
know.
not like we went up to Minnesota and was fishing in them, out of the lakes that they were born in. Up there in the northern lakes here in Indiana, they stock them with them to keep their prey fish down,
Right.
to allow for bigger bass and bigger panfish, bigger crappie. But it's still fun to catch a fish. It's essentially a freshwater barracuda. Is what I like to think of it as. But that's sort of
Fishing's fun.
it is, and that's probably. I mean, Jeff, what would you say like the one thing you want people to get out of this if they haven't been fishing or haven't been fishing in a long time?
Yeah.
Is there a wrong way to do it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that drives me nuts is when I see people
It's not what
using
I'm-
a spinning reel upside down with
Oh.
it up in the air. And
Okay.
you'll see it sometimes on like commercials and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, they're trying to make it like father and son. He's taking his
Or
kid
like a
fishing.
Cialis commercial.
Cialis. Because when a man reaches a certain age,
Right.
he knows how to get things done.
Yeah, like
right?
holding the spinning reel
Right.
upside down.
Right.
Okay, right.
So that's kind of crazy.
So-
like that drives me nuts.
See, I
So a spinning reel
probably
is
would have done that.
Yeah. So a spinning reel is the one, obviously, that sort of hangs down underneath the rod.
Right.
And has the open face.
Top.
Right.
Right.
I was going to say maybe you should explain
Sometimes
the
people
different
call 'em-
types
right.
of reels. So they
Sometimes people
understand.
call them an open face reel.
Right.
And those are the most versatile to use.
Absolutely.
But they take a fair level of experience.
I would say middling. I mean, that's the middling.
I mean, like
range.
maybe like for instance, my 2 daughters are pretty good fisher girls, pretty good fisher people.
Nice job, Dad.
Fishermen.
Nice
Right?
job,
Yeah,
Dad.
yeah.
Women.
Fisher women. I mean, they grab fish, they catch fish, all this kind of stuff.
Well, they bait their own hook.
They're not baiting their own hook.
Okay.
That's mostly just
That's
because
okay. That's okay.
Well, actually, I have had them do it a little bit, but mostly I'm just concerned about them actually like jabbing themselves
Yeah,
with a hook.
sure.
You know, it's not because they're kind of grossed out, but
Right.
They're still using bait casters,
Okay.
right? Closed space
Push button.
reels,
Zebco 33.
Zebco 33. Classic.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh god, and you still see these guys around, old timers. Gotta get me a Zebco 33.
Right.
Yeah,
that is the marine rifle of any like fisher person. That's the one. That's the old trustee that's standing in the back,
Yeah, but they're
tucked up
actually
in the
junk.
rafters. They're
Crap. A newer version, especially. Maybe you had an old one. They're a little better quality, but
what we mean by Zebcos is he's talking closed face, so it looks like it almost has like a torpedo top. You just see the string come out, and then there's the one button. You
Right.
push the one button,
Right.
you hold it down while you're pulling back, and then you let go,
That's what
when
I've
you're casting,
fished with. That's
Yeah.
why.
and then you let it go. It's the standby. It's the
Old trusty.
It's the old Zebco 33.
Yep.
It's what every child
So
fishing
that
pole
one
is
can
modeled
be on
after.
top.
That one is
that
on
one
top.
is on
Has to be
top.
on
Right.
top, right?
It has to be on
So
top.
forget your
Yep.
stomach.
Okay.
And then I would say, like I said, the spinning reel, the open face reel, that's the middling, and then the more advanced would be like the bait caster.
Yes.
Right.
Which is you see the spoil of thread in the center. You have to use your thumb essentially not only to unlock the gears, but also to sort of act as like your own brake there. So
Yeah.
as
Is that what that little bar that flips across did? Is that
no, that's an open. That's
Right.
a
It's a
spinning
spinning
reel.
reel.
Oh,
That's-
right.
that- that- you're talking about the bell. They call it the bell.
okay?
But the bait casters are small. They're compact. You put them on a longer pole.
There's a little rod running across with the loop, and the line
Yeah.
goes through the loop, and you spin it, and it'll back and
You're
forth.
perfectly describing like an Abbott Garcia sort of
Yeah,
bait
you know.
cast.
Yeah.
And you got to use your thumb, like I said, to break that spool because it'll spin free. And if the bait hits the water and the force of the line no longer has any place to pull it to, then you'll get a lot of backlog.
Now
Right.
I'm looking at it. I see it.
Right.
Now that I'm looking at it, I see
But
it.
that's probably the most difficult for the type of fishing rods or reels that
Probably
we're
the
going to
most
be dealing
I
with.
would say
expensive,
so.
too, right?
Yeah.
Deal
Yeah.
with
Those are a little percentage
Do
of
you-
people
Do you use one?
No.
See, okay.
I've never actually owned a bait caster.
It's an interesting like. I haven't either. I have a spinning reel, but when we go fishing, when I bum one off my dad and my brother more times than not because it sort of adds just like a different level of dexterity to
Okay,
fishing,
yeah.
and if you're using a nice big like a Carolina rig worm and you're going to drag it along the bottom of the pond or whatever it is you're going to do, having that bait caster that spin free like that lets it go a lot farther than your open face, and that's what you really want. You want to get it out there as far as possible because you want to take as few as casts as possible. You want to cover as much area as you can. So using a bait caster is really helpful for that, and a lot different than using, let's say, like a fly rod where you're only going to be casting out maybe 35, 40 feet at a time.
Right.
Yeah,
Um,
because it doesn't matter how much you load on that string, it's force inertia's only going to take it so far. But I mean,
Well, I started with a cane pole.
a cane pole.
Cane pole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you 90 years old?
Well, I think that's where you start off.
I
most
started with my
kids.
great grandfather.
Yeah.
We would go to a pond, and my first fishing pole was a cane pole.
I honestly, I don't think. I mean,
You just try to get the kid
is
a cane
literally-
pole,
it is
drop it
literally
in and catch some bluegill.
A long cane, with a string attached to it. You got your line attached with just a bobber. We had the not
The
a
spring?
slip, not a
The
slip,
spring
no,
thing?
not a slip bobber or spring, but the actual the bobber that will lay flat on the surface of the water, and then once they pull it, then it will actually
okay. I know
tip
what you're
up.
talking about.
Yeah.
So, just a very basic old fashioned. We'd go to the cemeteries and get catalpa worms off the catalpa trees and use those to go fish for, panfish, bluegill, etc. Just to me, that's my favorite kind of fishing is just good farm pond. Like a really good old farm pond that's got a good ecosystem. That's my preference. So
What kind of fishing would you say you've done the most of, Jeff?
Definitely done the most of probably river fishing. White River, obviously. Mississinawa is close to here, so I tend to do a lot of river fishing. Like you, I mean that's about the only options you have: river,
Right.
ponds, reservoirs.
We don't have an ocean.
We don't have an ocean, and we don't have really, we have a lot of retention ponds.
Right.
Right.
It takes a few years before you're going to build up any fish in those, right?
Which may or may not even get of any size because there's a problem with fish getting stunted in ponds if there's too many or the balance is off.
Right.
And that sort of
Yeah, I was reading about some of our reservoirs here in like West Boggs Reservoir here in southern Indiana. Like they have tried for like the last 20 years to recover a fish population because they get like gizzard shad just explode. Gizzard shad, then like the
That's a
sport
type of fish?
Gizzard
like
shad,
a bait fish.
It's like a bait fish.
yeah.
Okay.
But they like explode. They eat everything and then the actual sport fish, your bass, your perch, your crappie. Well, probably not perch down there, but your bass, your crappie, your panfish, bluegills, and so forth. They can't keep up with the gizzard shad, and then your sport fish, even though they can eat, like the larger sport fish can eat those, but their young can't keep up with the gizzard shad. So then they never have a chance to sort of reclaim themselves. So
right.
I think they're in the process this year of even like trying to chemically kill off a lot of the gizzard shad there in West Boggs, and then try to rebuild the population back up without the sort of the gizzard shad explosion.
Yeah.
Huh.
See, that's like I have an aunt who has a very old farm pond, very old, and like I would take people there, they'd never believe me. Take them there, literally every cast. You'd go out there, you would catch a 2 to 3 pound bass every cast.
And where is this?
It's in Blackford County.
Okay.
Should take us.
But her husband,
Yeah.
her
I
husband,
bet you can't let me do that.
her husband never wanted you to take any bass, and so inevitably, what has happened is those large bass just ate everything, and now you go out there and it's the cycle is rebuilding itself. Because it got to the certain point where there was only a few very large bass, and then eventually they must have just died off.
Right.
And now it's in the process of rebuilding. You go out there and it's not nearly as robust. Like growing up out there, it was crazy. Just a pink floater worm, go up along the edge of the bank, and every cast, boom. Cast, boom. But because people didn't want to harvest, I mean, you have to harvest some of the fish. There has to be that
circle of life.
that
Ask
balance.
Mufasa.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, there's a lot of farm ponds where there's just filled with bass. They're 8 inches long,
Right.
9, and they'll never get. And that fish might be 6 years old,
Right.
or whatever.
And won't have the sort of the ecosystem to allow it to continue to grow.
Right.
Because it really isn't about size. I mean, I've fished ponds, maybe, I don't know. I mean, what would you consider a fairly small pond, and pull decent fish out of it if you've got a
Right.
nice ecosystem or a nice balance.
Yeah.
But it's weird how quickly those ponds can flip, and all of a sudden things are disrupted.
Yeah.
Like your oxygen count goes down.
Like they
and
put sturgeon in there. The freshwater sturgeon.
they're actually endangered in Indiana.
Yeah, they're huge.
Yeah.
I mean, like 4 feet long fish out in this pond. I mean, not teeny tiny, but not a large farm pond.
It must be spring fed then, because
Well, that's weird.
sturgeon need a lot of like clean moving water.
Yeah. So
Or maybe
I don't think they probably made it.
I don't know. I haven't been out there in a few years. The last time I was out there, there were a few of them still out there.
That's
sure
really
wasn't
weird.
like grass carp or something.
No, they told us because I didn't know what they were.
Oh,
and I asked my uncle,
not-
and they're like, "No, they put these sturgeon there."
Because
So-
I've seen people do that before. Like they go and
Grass carp.
grass
Very
carp,
common.
or any other sort of like there might be variations of those that they do that help keep like weed population, which actually can hurt you because you need that weeds to oxygenate your water. They're the ones that
Right.
put oxygen in the water. If you don't have a moving water source, like you go by a lot of houses or whatever, they might have a fountain in there, and it looks nice, but really most of the time that's for the well-being of the fish, because the water comes up, it collects oxygen when it's sort of aerated, and then it brings the oxygen back down when it comes through. So you want
Right.
some moving water. It also
Breaks
keeps,
the surface.
and it allows the water to the pond to adequately sort of digest things, so it doesn't become stagnant and sort of stinky or scummy.
right.
There's I mean, I don't know where you guys want to go with this. Well, I mean,
I have a question.
Okay.
So, how often when you go fishing, all three of you, the last time you went fishing, did you eat what you caught?
I have not done that in probably 15 years. I usually just do catch and release.
Yeah.
same here. Not because I wouldn't. The big part is you got to know the lake that you're in. You got to make sure that the lake that you're in is essentially safe or has been safe, if you care about that sort of thing. But really, it's more hassle than anything else. It's we don't necessarily want to take from the ecosystem unless we know that it needs to be done. But once you catch the fish, then you got to sort of preserve the fish till you get to a point where you can clean the fish, and then you've got to be in a position where you can basically properly store the fish that you clean. But no, I think the last time we ate any fish that we caught was probably 3 or 4 years ago, and that was sort of like at the campground as we ate it, or as we caught it, we cooked it and ate it.
Right. Yeah, that's about the same for me. Out of the river, you don't want to eat.
Yeah.
Right.
There's actually like consumption advisories on some rivers and areas.
Like the White River in there one.
Yeah. And I mean, it says stuff like, pregnant women and young children shouldn't eat it, and
You shouldn't eat it more than 8 ounces in a month or something like that.
right. Yeah. But the reservoirs typically, are pretty safe. And it just depends if you like to eat fish, freshwater fish.
Yeah.
Panfish are good.
Well, see, and that's sort of, when you're eating a fish, you're eating what that fish has been eating. So
Right.
the further up the food chain you can get, typically the more refined the meat is going to be. If you're eating a fish like a bottom feeder fish, or like more of a veggie fish, like a panfish will eat anything, but they eat a lot of plant and algae consumption. But if you eat the fish that's eating the panfish, then you're sort of refining your fish meat every time.
Okay.
That's why people go really crazy for walleye.
Yeah.
Walleye is
Good
a fish.
Good.
Walleye is a fish that basically has completely sustained itself on other fish.
Yeah.
Right.
Not crawfish, not bugs that's falling in the ground. I mean, it's a hunter fish. So the meat that it's getting and the nutrients it's getting is basically refined fish.
Really.
That looks like that would hurt if it got a hold of your finger.
Oh,
Talking about a
Yeah,
walleye?
they would.
They have
yeah.
they have the
You pick them
gill
up by the
plates too.
gills. Yeah, you pick them up
Yeah.
by the gills, the bottom of the gill.
Yeah,
Do they have? Do they have the gill plates? The walleye?
Yeah,
they'll slice you. if you-
Their gills are pretty sharp,
You
pretty tough.
Get them right there underneath the
Right.
chin, essentially,
Yeah.
where their gills come in under their chin. Yeah, don't grab their mouths.
Right.
But I mean, people are really popular for catfish too, but catfish eat a lot of other fish, but they're also sort of hanging around
on
the bottom.
fishing.com. I just went to fishing.com.
Not a sponsor.
The main fish that they list
could if they
across
wanna
the
be,
top of this is bass, trout, walleye, salmon, carp.
I personally think that walleye is the best. The freshwater game. I think it tastes.
Well, even
the
more
best.
than like a trout.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I
really like walleye.
Like
I agree.
nice, fresh,
Filleted.
breaded and fried walleye.
Yeah.
I don't know. You can get much better than
What
that.
about grayling?
Grayling. I don't even know what you're talking about. dude.
Those are only found in like the northern latitudes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Up in Canada?
Yeah. You gotta. I don't know exactly how far north you gotta go for grayling.
Well, because we're kind of in the northern latitude here.
Well, no, we're not.
I mean,
You gotta drive up to Michigan before you're halfway to the North Pole.
you're right. You're right.
Right? That one sign
Yeah.
they have up there
Yeah,
on the
you're right.
highway.
Well, I mean, we're no Yukon territory, so
yeah.
I don't know what a grayling is, but
But, yeah.
there's lots of different types of fishing, right?
Yeah. Catfish,
You can
yeah.
catfish. You can
Fish for
crappie
carp
fish.
if you want. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, have you ever fished for carp?
Yeah.
What
Fish
like
for carp.
when you
Okay.
go carp fishing? What's your what's your tackle? What do you take?
Well,
What do
the
you do?
easiest thing to use for bait is corn. Whole kernel corn out of a can.
Everybody always has a carp bait.
You always see a can
well,
of
you
corn
don't do
laying by the river.
the
Do you
the
chum
white
it up?
bread.
I don't have a special dough ball recipe. Now, one I read about a long time ago, it was rye bread and port. English, well, I don't know if it would be English.
That's
port, but-
expensive.
Yeah. That's
yeah.
well, the Europeans have a different take on carp than we do. Too.
It's a sport to them, an absolute sport. Like they have specialized tackle gear and everything.
I
they
will
use.
say
That's not a good fish to eat, right?
No, it's a mud bottom, so it actually has a mud vein like a shrimp does.
Well, originally they're not a native species here in the United States.
No.
They were brought here as a food source. Now,
Says it's an invasive pest to
Yeah.
most natural environments.
yeah,
yeah, we'll go fishing with them, and I haven't done this in probably 10 years, but we'll use our bow and arrows more times than not. And
Yeah.
just wait until they come up to the shallows to actually start spawning, and you'll just watch if all the grass tips are sort of going this direction, and you see one sort of going in the other direction, then you know there's probably a carp down there sucking at the roots of that plant. So
Right.
you'd sort of sneak over and wait over there, and you would. Just
Now
take
I've never
a shot at
tried
'em.
this. Now a big carp, I wouldn't try to eat. Like people that eat carp say the big ones aren't any good. The smaller ones, if you smoke them, supposedly they're really good.
I don't
smoke. You have a smoke. If you have a smoker,
Right.
try smoking it.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't think I'd ever eat a carp.
I know
You should try it sometime.
my dad has.
I call them
pond.
raccoon food. I call them. We throw them high enough on the shore that the raccoon can have it tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad has a pond, and anytime anyone's out there fishing, if they would pull a carp, they would just take it out. And there's a creek that runs back, and they just throw it in the creek.
Don't put it back in the water. Let
No, they
something
put
eat
it in a different water source.
No, don't
but
put it
now,
in the
but now
water,
it's in that
period.
water source.
But they do 3 times. There's been a specific item that's been pulled from Dad's pond, and that's a turtle. 3 different times that this turtle's been hooked.
Yeah.
And Dad actually has seen the turtle leave the pond and go to the creek that's behind. He crosses the cornfield to get to the creek.
They'll do it.
And he's
Probably
a
snapping
big
turtle.
dude. Yeah, he is mean looking. He's old looking too.
They can get old.
My grandfather would go. They would go down to Dale Hollow,
I hear
Eastport Dock
turtles
every
good.
year, and
It
they
is.
will fish. Would fish down there, and actually one year they would go kind of early in March, to go down there and fish.
crappie
and,
fishing.
No,
Or do you crappie fishing?
no, like they were
Stripers.
no, they were fishing for bass, largemouth, smallmouth, and he caught like a 6.5 pound smallmouth out of there. He caught a couple big ones.
That's pretty good.
Size,
Yeah, he got them. They were mounted.
Ever caught a 6
so-
pound smallie out of the White River?
Close.
But
Really?
Maybe like 4
All right,
and a
go
half.
ahead.
they'd go down.
That's pretty nice size smallie.
They go down there, and one year off the side of their boat, the water started bubbling and churning, and all of a sudden, this mound of mud appeared beside their boat, just floating. And what it was is it was this big snapping turtle that had just come off the bottom, and one of the guys took it and he killed it. Which I don't know that I would have done it, but we're talking a shell about that big. So it was a big
Yeah,
snapper.
yeah.
And when
about a
they,
foot in diameter
yeah, well, maybe
Maybe
about
more.
maybe a little
Foot
bit
and a
more
half.
than that, 1.5 feet.
for all my audio listeners out here.
So, but when they pulled that shell off of that turtle, there was musket lodged down deep in the very edge of the shell where it touched the flesh was a musket ball that was embedded down there. So they estimated that turtle clearly had to be close to 100 years old.
I'm surprised it wasn't bigger than that. You ever seen the one at the Shed Aquarium up in Chicago?
Well, maybe
that
it
sucker
was.
like
I don't know.
3.5 foot across.
We were just at Cincinnati Zoo not too long ago, and there was
I was curious where you were.
huge one there.
Okay.
Was
Huge
that an alligator snapping?
Alligator
Yeah, now those
snapping.
get really big.
Now there's a snapping turtle, and then there's an alligator snapping turtle.
Right. We have a snapping turtle here in Indiana. We have
Right.
some alligators.
We have
snapping
some
turtle.
alligators.
We had a one time down by the house I grew up in Hartford, randomly out of the blue, turtle on the street.
Yeah.
When they
no
when they
clue
get,
where he came from.
when they get the urge to find lady turtles, man, they take off.
Yeah.
We're not sure where he came from though. I'm thinking I don't know where the closest creek would be.
Well, back at our previous place of
Maybe the
employment,
sewer.
They'll cruise. I mean, they'll get it far away from a water source. Yeah.
I was sitting back in the maintenance department. Not that I did that often, but I was sitting back in the maintenance department. Early spring starts hitting. We got the garage doors open for the first time in probably months. And all of a sudden, this old dusty tortoise comes walking out of the back furniture area. I mean, he was dusty. He'd been back here for a while, just waiting on the garage doors to open, waiting for winter to pass. He must have been back here hibernating, essentially. But yeah, he
I'm
comes.
surprised if it was warm.
Yeah, well, I mean, he must have been maybe close to an exterior wall or something. But I mean, he comes out of there, back in the furniture warehouse, just comes out of the wall, out of the door, and walked underneath Vern's stool and headed out to greener pastures out the door. It's
Wow. They do a really weird, those turtles in the wintertime. It's really fascinating how they survive. Like a lot of them will go down to the bottom of a lake, pond,
And-
bury themselves in
And that's
mud,
what that one had done.
And they can, I suppose, like, since they're an amphibian, they can get some oxygen through their body. But there's and I've seen, read about it, how they are able to continue to, their
They
heart
just
rate
sort of
slows down
shut
super
themselves
slow. And
They're basically all pretty much dead for the
Right,
most part.
yeah.
And they can
But
survive
not
for
dead.
months
Yeah.
doing that. which is
so. All right. Well, I mean, we
ridiculous.
kind of got off the fishing topic, but
well, I mean, it's a tertiary.
and turtles are cool.
my fault.
Ninja Turtles type are cool, and regular turtles are cool too. But so if you are somebody that's listening to the podcast right now, and you're not somebody who's fished, or maybe you haven't fished in a long time, there's a couple things that you want to probably do before you get started. One, you're going to want to sort of know the rules because this
Right.
is a regulated sort of sport. You can't, if you found a fishing pole at a garage sale for $2.
If you're going somewhere public,
Well, even if you're going someplace private, there's sort of you need to have permission before you get started. But and that includes like the full. If somebody tells you, "Hey, go out and so and so's and go fishing," you can't necessarily take them on their face value because if you don't have a license, but yet that particular maybe is creek fed or has an overflow. If fish can swim from private land through public land to private land again, then you have to have a license for that particular to spot. Unless you own the farmland and you can stand on your farmland and cast your pole and hit the water, you have to have a license for that. Now licenses in Indiana, I think what $14 this year,
Oh, they're like 17.
maybe $17 this year.
18
They go
bucks.
from March to March.
Yeah.
So once you get one, you can have it till March the following year, which means you can go ice fishing if you want to go ice fishing. But it is something that you probably would want to do if you're interested in getting in the sport, so you don't get a ticket from the conservation officer or him confiscate your fishing equipment. But really, as a fisherman, I will buy a license even if I'm not going to be doing a lot of fishing, because that money actually is what supports things like West Boggs Reservoir getting repopulated with fish, so that the fish are available for my kids and so forth.
Really, as a sport, I mean, fishing's got to be one of the cheapest sports you could ever get into.
I was looking at Wally World today because I knew he was going to have this show today. I was
Go
looking
buy
at
an ugly stick.
Yeah.
looking at sort of like what's the cheapest way I could get into? Less than $15. Well, probably a little more than $15 with tax.
You got to buy the license too, though.
Well, I mean, once you have your license, basically, I'm saying like, what does your equipment cost to get started? $15. Now, are you going to have the best of everything?
No.
Are you going to have the
You
best?
don't need it.
Are you going to have the best of anything?
You don't need
And the
it.
thing is go to rummage sales. Almost
yeah.
any rummage sale, you're going to be able to buy yourself a decent pole, a decent reel for less than $10.
Right. And if it ends up being a Zebco 33, and that's what you got, so be it.
Just use it.
Yep.
Make sure you have good line.
New
though.
fishing line.
New line.
New fishing line
always
is a
the
big one.
thing.
Especially, retie your knots every once in a while. I mean,
And know how to tie the knot.
YouTube it.
Simple blood knot.
What's some Berkeley trilene? Is that?
Just a standard. I mean, it's
String.
easy. Couldn't be easier.
Oh, what type of fishing
What
line are
type
you
of
want to
fishing?
get? What depends on what you're fishing for.
yeah,
You always
just-
want to go. My rule of thumb, if you're using just the solo, unbraided fishing line, is I try to go at least like 5 to 10 pounds heavier than what I ever hope to catch. Now, a lot of your reels and rods.
What? So you're using like 15-pound test?
If I'm in an area where I might catch a 9-pound bass, then I want 15 pounds.
Dude, I would now see. I'm opposite. I don't use probably anything heavier than like 8-pound test, and I feel like I can catch anything in Indiana, even fish that are 40 or 50 pounds.
Sure. Well, see, I just don't want to have
Because it's known about how to use your drag
Right.
on your reel.
in the time that you might need to take and to be patient with it, where the fish.
Well,
go,
this,
and
this
so
is
forth.
this is my complaint with the Jeremy Irons, not Jeremy Irons.
Scar from Lion King.
No, the
Jeremy
deadliest catch,
Deadly-
or what's it called?
River Monster. guy.
River Monsters.
Okay, yeah.
All right, so he's an English dude.
Right.
Goes all over the world trying to catch river monsters, right? And he catches them. He hooks into these fish, and he tries to horse them in, as we call it in the biz, horsing them in.
Right.
So that is to say, he's just trying to just drag the fish in, just reel it in and drag it in.
Because that's what that gives him that physical struggle that they want to see. They don't want him.
Right.
They don't want him to be like, okay, and now we sit for 2 hours as the rod and the reel does its job.
It's right. It's then little wonder why he loses so much. Well, I mean, he's a wanker. That one. I was going to say this. If I can
Okay.
impart one piece of
Go.
fishing knowledge to the folks out there
what
when
you're
they're
here
fishing, okay? This is like the biggest thing. If you hook a fish, and you get a nice fish especially, but if you hook a fish and everybody's excited that, mom's catching a fish, dad's catching, or little Susie or little Johnny's getting this nice fish, and they're reeling it in, and it's a real struggle, and you start getting close to the bank, do not grab the line. Don't ever grab the line with your hand. You will lose the fish. All you do is when the fish gets close to the shore, you just walk backwards and drag the fish up on the shore. If you grab that line with your hand, which is people's natural instinct to do, I understand it, the fish will get off. It will get loose because you make that line then automatically
Stationary.
stationary.
You lose the spring.
There's no resistance. There's no give now. The fish will get off.
And then what happens if you lose that fish?
And-
right as you're coming out of the water is you get a hook on the bottom side of your hand. Which,
And then you might get a hook in your hand.
which
And then little Susie, little Johnny's crying. Everybody's disappointed.
That's an important thing too, though. A skill learned is how to actually hook the fish.
You
Right.
have to set the hook.
You have to set the hook.
Let's go back to the string thing real quick because I wanted to say that if you're using normal solo string, but if you're the type of person that's only going to buy the line once, then buy the braided line. And then when you buy 15-pound test, it only has like an 8-pound width.
I've never used a braided line.
You've never used a braided. You
used a
should
braided
try
line.
it. I mean,
I don't want to use it because like I get hung up a lot, and then if I get hung up,
But you never get hung up on braided line because you can jerk that. You will pull rocks out of the river, and the line doesn't snap. I mean, it is.
maybe I should try it.
You get those big backlashes or whatever towards the top, and you're like, I'll just bite it out or whatever. You just pull them out when you got braided line, man. It's especially with kids fishing. Yeah, I think what my brother and I did for all of our poles is we just took like the first 40 yards and did regular Berkeley, what do they call it, monofilament,
Yeah.
and ran it that way. And then like the last 20 yards, we bought like one thing of braided, and we just put braided on the last 20 yards. So they're casting stuff out. They got a full rod, so full reel of string, so it casts correctly. But the part that's actually going to do all the work is just that monofilament, and it works. Or not the braided string. It makes a huge difference. I'm hearing some static. You guys hear that too?
Yeah, I got some buzzing.
Yeah, a little
You're
buzzing.
all right.
That's okay.
Just want to make sure it wasn't my phone on a cable or something.
Probably is.
But yeah, so really the string, that was one of my fears. Like I remember, I talked about going fishing a lot with my dad. He's like, here, cast this, catch this fish, throw it up there at that bank, throw it up, whatever, just don't get it hook up. And of course, what happens as a kid? You're not cranking the right speed. You're not feeling the bottom of the surface. You're bouncing up along rocks or you're throwing it into the bottom of a tree, and eventually you get hung up. And then my dad's constant response would be, throw the trolling motor in reverse and drop. I mean, it was a pressure situation.
Yeah, but that's how you learn.
Well, I mean, the great thing is with the braided stuff, I don't care because I'm going to get it loose anyway. It's not going to.
I've
not gonna stop my
never
fishing.
used it. I've never used it.
It is. It just feels better. Like it really
it has
does.
less give, so you have more.
You feel
direct.
more of
Yeah.
everything that
I
happens.
have
Yeah.
heard that about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, never used it.
Hey, like I said, give it a shot. Try it out on a
right.
nice
I'll do
bait
that.
caster.
Yeah.
Get you a nice bait caster so you can feel every pop and hole and.
Yeah, but see, I've gotten to the point where if I go fishing anymore, I really only want to do like bobber fishing. I don't have the desire to do a lot of bass fishing anymore. I don't know why. From time to time, it's okay, but I just rather go and like hook into like you get a big old hybrid bluegill, like get your little ultralight reel, and you hook in. I have as much fun doing that as I ever did trying to go catch big bass.
But there's something too. Like
Right.
still that's on my bucket list. I want to catch a big bass once. Like I've caught bass and I've caught decent sized bass, but like a big bass, like one that I could get a picture of, put on my desk. You know, I've never caught that big bass yet. I've been in the boat when other guys have caught big bass. I've been on the pier or the shore when other guys have caught big bass, but I've never set the hook on one myself. So we sort of talked about setting the hook before,
Right.
how to catch fish. The thing is you don't want to be feeding fish. And this is what I tell my kids when we get started. We're not here to feed fish. So, and feeding fish actually is my least favorite way to fish. And what I mean by that is you're fishing off a dock at a nice farm pond. It's got a nice healthy like panfish population.
Yeah.
Get you a little bee moss, put it on a little hook, throw it out there. You know, it's the best way to get a kid into fishing because you're just going to catch fish after fish
Right.
after fish after fish. So you're throwing it out there. If you're feeding fish, what you're doing is you're throwing it out there. You're not watching. And that poor little bluegill has got that sucker halfway down to his small intestines before the kid realizes it's on there. And then when you go trying to dehook this fish, you've got to basically perform some sort of unpleasant procedure on it.
Right.
Looks like a Planned Parenthood fetus when you're done. And, but then you're like, don't worry, guys. I'm sure it'll be fine. You have to jump back in the water.
Yeah.
Does like
I said, it'll be all right.
does two little flips, and you're just hoping it sinks before they realize the other fish are eating it. But
Or the turtle.
or the turtle's eating it. But yeah, hey, we're all feeding the ecosystem, right?
That's right.
But really, you want to set that hook. You want to watch if you're bobber fishing. You want to be watching that bobber. As soon as it goes down with any sort of authority, you got to go. You got to pop. You got to lift the end of your pole. You're not pulling back on it. You're not, because that's going to stretch your line. You're going to break your
You
line.
got to have your line kind of tight, not tight, but get the slack out first.
Because we're not trying to jerk. We're not trying to jerk. We're trying to pull. That's what we want. We want to change the heading of the fish. So if it's pulling it down this way, we want to pull it up so that the barb of the hook. If you've ever seen a hook before, it has that second sharp point further down the neck. We want that to go through the surface of the skin, typically right around the mouth parts. Mouth parts of fish heal quick.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
have you ever?
It probably hurts like hell, but we're not doing any permanent damage.
My understanding, they don't have any nerves at all.
Yeah,
in
how
there.
could they? They live in the. Oh, like let's take
Well, it's
the
all
White River.
It's all bone.
They live in a river. They eat crayfish.
Right.
They're bumping up on rocks. Like they're resilient, tough animals. Like
Right.
they're living a hard knock life, right?
Yeah.
So
So
hook
is
in their
Cecil.
mouth. Now that reminds me though, when I was a kid, I haven't seen this for years. There's a commercial of a apple sitting by a lake.
That's
Have you
not
ever
a
seen
commercial. That's not a commercial. That's like a Tales of the Night or Dark Side or something. It used to be on the USA.
that?
I know exactly what
I
you're
know it was
talking
a
about.
commercial, right?
No, it was like a short for like Tales of the Dark Side. And when USA would do their scary movies all night long, they would show this short. Do you want to just tell more about it?
Well, it was this. Came in the scene. There's a beautiful red apple sitting on like a stump, like right by a lake.
Right beside a guy who's fishing.
Right beside a guy who's fishing. And so they kind of focus on the apple, and the guy like picks up the apple and takes a bite, and the next thing that happens to him, like, yeah, he starts. I haven't seen it since I was a kid, but there's blood. There's like the guy
You thought
starts
this was
getting.
a commercial?
I thought it was a commercial for like PETA or something, or
PETA.
yeah. They focus a lot of efforts on like trying to get people to not fish. Is that a thing?
Do they?
I don't
I've
know.
never heard
Is there a
PETA.
group that objects to fishing? I'm sure there is, but
I'm sure there is. People
anyway,
object to everything.
Going back to hooks, have you ever used circle hooks?
Circle hooks. Do you mean like the ones that almost close all the way back around to the
It's
top?
supposed to be an improved design.
It
I've never had much luck with it.
Like when you pull, it's going to
You
pull
don't
more
set
from
the
the center.
hook. You don't set a hook like you typically will with a regular hook. You just start reeling, and supposedly the hook just sets itself in the fish.
No, I mean I've had hooks like that before. And I think we use a lot of those with BOBcast, especially with the kids. But I mean we still try to set the hook.
Yeah, they make like a semicircle, and then the barb actually kind of has a right angle tip that comes up, and there's like a right angle. So the kind of theory is fish gets the hook in their mouth. You just start reeling, and it just goes to the corner.
Well, I think
and it's supposed to be a more consistent corner hook set.
Where the eye of the where your string is attached to the hook, then is sort of going to be in relation to, it's going to turn that 90 degree, because when you pull on the eye of the hook, that's when it's going to set that hook.
Right.
So it's not a jerk. I mean, if you're pulling it this way or pulling it to the side, it's not going to matter. It's going to naturally the way the
I
force
think
is
if you
come,
try to
it's gonna
set
be
a
bobbing
hook by like pulling your rod back, you're going to miss hook. You're going to miss a lot.
You think with the
I think
circle?
you're supposed to just reel.
I honestly, I don't know enough about them. We've put them on the
Never
kids'
used
poles just because
There's a lot of technology out there with fishing. A
Well,
lot
that's
of
the thing.
technology.
That's the thing. Fishing is one of those things where people invest a lot of money in it if it's something that they do a lot, and sometimes they don't have to. I mean, who was anybody?
Like Doug's cane pole. It works. Still works to this day.
Did anybody buy flying lures off TV like I did? I mean, no,
I never bought
But it is crazy though how having all of those options. I'll give you an example. We were down at Southern Indiana, Patoka Lake, fishing, rainy day, and we tried. I mean, like everything. Nothing was biting, and one of the guys like, "Hey," it's like, "I'm going to try this. It's called a sluggo." The name of the type of the worm, sluggo. They brand new. He's like, well, I'm going to try this. So he goes and he hooks it in the middle. He had a few different types, but he hooked it in the middle and literally just threw it out over the edge and kind of back and forth through the water like twice, just out, over, back, and the second time back, boom, caught a bass. And literally because of evidently the action and the collar, we all put sluggos on and we were just catching fish left and right.
Huh. Yeah.
So it's just it's so they're so finicky, about
They can be,
temperature and water clarity and the action of what you're doing. So I mean, you can really, that's the whole thing. The professionals that do this, they've got the knowledge and the experience and the variety of equipment that they know how to utilize all of those combinations to maximum effectiveness. So, you can get in it deep for a lot of money trying to cover all of your bases. But if you're just going simple though, you can have a great time just literally going out with the bobber, the hook, and the bee moth. And if you're in the mindset to go instead of going fishing, going catching. Little kids, they don't want to go fishing. They want to go catching.
Yeah. Put that on a T-shirt, Doug. Let's
Yeah.
go. We'll market that.
What?
We're not going fishing. We're taking him
Get
catching.
hooked on fishing.
We're going catching. Because most people don't want to go fish. Fishing is boring. I want to go catching.
Yeah. Okay, when I was a kid, fishing was boring. As I've grown up and sort of understood a little bit more of it, I do enjoy the fishing part of it.
Right.
To me, it's the puzzle. It's man versus nature. Okay?
It is.
It's it's getting out there, getting your feet wet, getting a little sunburn on the top of your head. I have such confidence in this bait. There's a little bit of stubbornness too.
Maybe like there's some women that are going to walk by and they see you fishing and you catch something and then they're like, "Wow, that guy must be a good provider."
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That's how I landed my wife.
Yeah.
That's how I landed my wife. I was just fishing one day and she was like, that guy could take care of me.
If you're having a hard time at a spot fishing, like not catching anything, well, that's one thing. Yeah, you just don't stay in the same place. But one of the best ways to see if there's fish in a location, fish a worm on bottom.
Yep.
Worm on bottom.
And that's why it's popular, especially.
Just hook a worm through its head, through its mouth, put it on a hook with just a sinker.
You're talking a live worm?
A live worm, night crawler.
Okay.
You can catch your own. They're free.
They're
in
in
your yard.
They're in the
After
dirt.
it rains, you can go out in your yard at night. Your yard will be full of worms. Some people these days don't even know this.
Really?
No.
Okay. I'm with you.
Yeah, they don't realize
I'm with you, man.
because they're not looking for them. So after it rains,
Get you a flashlight.
Get a flashlight. Don't shine it directly on them. Go out in your yard. Your yard will be full of worms. Catch some worms, put them in some dirt, and go fishing the next day.
Don't even use dirt. Use wet newspaper. Just throw them in wet newspaper.
Wet newspaper. Put the worm, put a hook on, put a sinker on, hook a worm onto the hook, and throw it out.
Okay, go through the head, wrap it twice around the body, and go through the middle section of the head.
Right, that's good. You'll catch anything with that.
You're gonna keep your worm for multiple uses.
Yeah,
and
boom, there you go.
If
there's something in there, it'll eat it.
Because that's natural food for them. If a worm happens to fall into a lake, they're going to eat it regardless.
For whatever reason.
They like
that's
worms.
the great mystery. I don't really understand or know if that's ever been solved because worms can drown.
Right.
So they're not
what are they doing there in the
water,
first place?
But fish go crazy for them. So I don't really...
Yeah.
I think it just goes to show that fish will essentially eat anything that's edible.
Kind of talking about worms. I this is an interesting factoid
Great
about night crawlers or worms or earthworms, as people call them. I've read that there is not a piece of dirt on this planet that has not passed through a worm at some point. Isn't that amazing? At some point,
think about it.
all dirt has passed through a worm.
So everything
I
we've
find
touched.
that hard to believe for some reason.
Yeah.
Well, I don't. I mean,
I think it's totally feasible.
When you think of the fact that they also say that there's more stars in the sky than grains of sand on this planet.
Yeah.
I mean, think about how much sand is on this planet. At the bottoms of the oceans, every beach, in every play box, every sandbox, and every middle class white American home. But there's more stars in the sky.
Lots of play sand.
Yeah, but sand's not dirt.
Sterile.
But how does dirt create? It's the cycle, Doug. It's the cycle. The dirt comes from somewhere. It once was a tree or a leaf that had to be eaten and digested by an earthworm in order to become the black, fertile soil that we have.
It's all detritus.
It's all part of the cycle. They are the great consumers.
I don't believe it.
Now, are the earthworms? I've always seen this over the years. This is another thing about worms. Okay. I've always seen this over the years. I don't know if it's true or not. I don't know if it was like a
urban
clickbait sort of urban legend that predates the internet. But, apparently the earthworms in Australia or New Zealand are like 12 feet long or something. And you see a picture occasionally of some, Crocodile Dundee type character holding up an earthworm that's,
not been
10
photoshopped
feet long.
His arms.
Well, it would have been it would have been predate Photoshop, so it would have been like people actually,
I've never heard that. I mean, I've seen some.
You've never heard that?
I've never heard that. I've never seen that or heard that.
Yeah.
Ew.
They're basically night crawlers, but they're super humongous.
What are they?
12-foot long
I
earthworms.
don't know, like New Zealand earthworms. Or
I don't know about
something.
12
Giant.
feet, but there's some long ones here. Giant
earthworm.
Ew. Ugh.
So they work. Leeches work.
Oh yeah, those are some big
leeches work.
worms.
Minnows. I don't really like using minnows.
I've
honestly never had.
If that's real, that is a that is a huge worm.
I've never had much luck with minnows personally myself. I mean, it depends on what we're doing, I guess. But
crappie like minnows.
Yeah, but I mean, I
Crappie-like
don't do a
minnows.
lot of crappie fishing, I guess.
Crappies don't eat worms, really.
What's your catfish secret? Do a lot of catfishing, Jeff?
Ivory soap.
Ivory soap?
Ivory soap.
They like ivory soap.
They love ivory soap.
We should
Cut in chunks, put it on a treble hook, throw it on bottom.
we just use chicken liver, but I guess we should,
Catfish.
Chicken
Yeah.
livers work okay.
What about
A big bunch of night crawlers on a treble hook, like a ball of night crawlers. That works okay too.
what about
whatever they can suck up.
what about some noodling? You ever doing noodling?
No noodling. It's illegal in Indiana to catch a fish with your bare hands.
I would.
Really?
Yep. I actually just read that on the way, or not on the way over, but
The reason I wouldn't do it is because of the chances of the other things in the holes. So if you don't know what noodling is, I know what noodling is because I watched a documentary on it called Okie Noodling. It's actually really good. Flaming Lips did the soundtrack to it. It was kind of
do you want
Flaming
me to
Lips,
read
wow.
this here? It is illegal to use the following devices to take fish from public waters. A weir, W-E-I-R.
A weir.
A weir.
a weir is a it's like a thing you put in a river, and it catches the.
Oh, okay.
Like nets.
No, it's like it's like a
baffle,
Native
like a-
American thing. It's almost like a canal.
Fish trap. A fish trap.
It's a trap. Yeah.
Fish trap. Okay, I understand. A weir,
That's
electric
good, Mike.
current,
Yeah.
dynamite or other explosives,
Yeah.
a firearm, hand alone, or substance that may weaken or poison the fish.
Yeah.
So it's right there in the directions. No noodling.
But I wouldn't do it because
Yeah.
what you're doing is you're reaching into the nesting area of the catfish to reach in there and pull and have them grab onto your hand and then you pull them out.
It's crazy.
But the thing is, you're reaching into just a black hole. You don't know what other creature could be in there.
It's too much like when the Prince guy stuck his hand in the stump in Flash Gordon. I couldn't do it. Yeah.
Right.
Nice reference, Jeff.
Yeah.
Nice reference.
There's something crazy in
But
there.
I mean,
can't
there's
do that.
turtles live in holes like that.
Yeah.
Like
absolutely.
a snapping turtle, you're losing a finger. That finger is
That'll
gone.
demolish you.
You're not losing a finger.
And, a catfish, even a small catfish, has really powerful jaws. Like,
Right.
a lot of times, like, if you're kind of monkeying around, even with a small one, you kind of stick your finger in there and they clamp. I mean, they've got some level of pressure on their jaws.
Right.
Like, you a big one is really going to...
Because they eat by, like, sucking, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, they have, like, pretty raspy teeth.
Right.
As well, so they can kind of shred you if your hand's unprotected. But yeah, I mean their jaws, like their clamp down pressure is pretty decent, and a big one's going to be even more strong.
What's the biggest catfish you ever caught?
Biggest catfish.
Man-eater?
I actually caught
Probably
an
2
albino
feet.
catfish one time. It was pretty
Yeah?
big. It was about probably 16 pounds. It was a channel cat that was albino. That was pretty interesting.
Was that a pay pond place?
It was a farm pond.
Farm pond?
Right. I mean, they stocked
They stocked
albino, but it had grown. It had been in there for
That's weird.
That is
Like yellow.
15, 20 years.
There's actually a farm
That was
pond
the
I
biggest
fished at
one,
that
yeah.
had a whole. They had like 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah.
And the water out there, they had it chlorinated. Or it was really blue or whatever, and they'd go swimming, and you'd be like a little fleet of albino catfish going through this really blue, clear water. It was pretty cool.
I mean, and that was a good size catfish. And I actually caught that on like 4-pound tests, like micro fishing tackle.
Took your time.
Took me quite a while to get it in. Maybe 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It was probably 16 to 20 pound catfish.
That's pretty good.
Shredded that reel. After that reel was just it was fried.
Well, let's say this. We're talking about catfish real quick. This is a misconception of people that may have. Catfish do have stingers on them, or they call them stingers. Barbs.
On
But
their fins.
but it is not the whiskers that you see at the front of their
No.
mouth. That's not where a catfish is going to get you. It is on the dorsal fins. Is it? No, it's a,
Right.
pectoral fins.
Yeah,
excuse
the
me.
dorsal's on top.
It is the pectoral fins that have the barbs on them. They're just, I think it's just,
bone or
they're
something.
It's just the
they
bone.
use them to sort of crawl around the bottom of the rivers and stuff like that. Like it's their anchor. Like if they swim upriver and they
It's a
want to stay in one
rudimentary
spot,
leg.
they sort of just stick those barbs down in there and hold them there. But I was going to ask you, because for years, I mean, Alabama rigs are fairly new. You ever use an Alabama rig? Or you?
That's the one that simulates a mass of.
Yeah, you get 4 or 5 of them.
right.
4 or 5. They haven't had the directions here in the Indiana Regulatory Guide the last time I checked, but they're in here now. And I was
So
just,
what does it say?
it says that you can use them, and they can have a mass of. Let me see. You can have as many arms as what you'd like. So basically, let me explain to Mikey here what we're talking about. What it is you're casting out. Your line is tied to one central eye at the beginning, and it looks like it's like a mobile, like
Kinda
a child's
right.
mobile,
Like a triangle type shaped apparatus.
and they'll have arms like a spinning reel going 4 or 5 different directions, and then 2 sort of in the center, and then it simulates 4 or 5 or 6 bait fish all swimming together. But they were called Alabama rigs. Then they became umbrella rigs. I'm not. And then when they first came out, they were pretty expensive because I think there was just a lot of machining to get them to sort of work right. Now they're fairly cheap, but
Chinese started making them, so they're cheaper now.
your umbrella rig can have no more than 3 hooks, so it is still possible to catch.
So
more
what
than
it
one fish.
simulates is a school of minnows. To a fish, it appears there's a big school of minnows swimming by, and a predatory fish will just
Go
attack the school.
Right.
or what you typically would do is what I've seen is the one in the middle is further back. It
Right,
sort of
yeah.
creates
The weak one.
sort of creates
It's the
an
weak
image
one.
of
it's the old weak one.
right.
in the
It
back.
sort of gives a vulnerability,
All right.
and they go for the vulnerable ones.
So you can catch bigger fish with this setup.
Wow.
Well, you
they
can't
just-
necessarily catch bigger fish, but I have seen it like online and pictures and so forth where guys have caught like 2 or 3 fish at the same time.
Yeah.
Like you
They're
run
outlawed in some tournaments. And
so
stuff.
you run them through like a school of white bass. I can imagine you would catch all 3 of them would hit them. But that's probably my all-time favorite type of fish.
Now, see, on those, there's also a blade. Actually, a blade that's used in fishing. It's called an Indiana blade.
Right.
There's certain shapes.
A lot of them are named after states.
Carolina blade.
Carolina rig is a different type, but yeah.
Indiana blade.
There's a Texas, I think. Texas rig.
Those sorts of things. I don't know how it became called an Indiana blade.
I wonder if they were made here and that's what it was. But it's just a piece of chrome that flashes. And if you've ever seen
what's it shaped like?
It's kind of like just a
willow?
spoon, maybe, or there's a willow blade.
There's a willow blade,
but an Indiana blade. It's kind of just shaped like a spoon.
I think it's actually on the front coat. No, you can't.
You remember the days when the buzz baits became real popular back in the 80s?
I went fishing last weekend. That's what we used. We didn't use buzzbait. We used dead mouse. But essentially, we were up in northern Indiana, some of those freshwater lakes. And yeah, we just threw great big dead mouse. Had some buzz on the top there, right there where the whiskers would be, essentially. A nice little tail. We throw it up there on the weeds and run it across the weeds like it was a mouse running across the weeds. And it would go maybe 2.5 feet when a nice little 8-inch, 12-inch bass would pop up through there and grab that sucker and pull it down. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
we didn't do it as long as we wanted to, but it was a good time. And that's sort of
a lot of thought and ingenuity that these fisher of yore, as fishing technology's gotten better and better. But you think about all of those little things that the guys tinkered with. Well, if I take this and I strap on a sparkly piece of metal in this shape, and it'll simulate.
I can remember
this,
very
that,
much.
And the other.
My dad setting up essentially like the forge. I guess I don't know what I should call it, but like what is that called when you have just like a little bitty blacksmith like.
Still a forge, I think.
It's not a forge. It's not a forge. I don't want to say forge because that's not what it is.
Crucible.
A crucible, and making his own lead fishing parts.
Yeah.
They would build the molds, I think, over at Indiana Glass or whatever, and basically give them to the guys at Indiana Glass. So they would use their tool and die shop essentially to make the lead heads of the worm,
like a jig bait or something.
Like a jig bait and so forth. And he would be out in front of the garage with his little crucible going, melting down lead pieces melting down lead sinkers in order to turn them into like the little cones that you have on a Texas rig. Before that stuff was really available to be purchased mass market. And there's a lot of sort of crazy theories about the rise of Walmart that has a lot to do with its outdoor and fishing section, because when Walmart was still a new thing, they put a lot of emphasis on having a fully well-stocked sporting goods section, because it was sort of Walton's theory that if you keep husband and wife both happy for the same amount of time, you'll get both their dollars. So if both husband and wife had no problem going to the same store because there was enough to do for him to look at, is enough to do for her to shop at, then you would get the purchases from both of them. So I think a lot of the sort of the mass market sort of when a lot of those baits became available outside of a Bass Pro Shop catalog. I mean, Kmart always had a pretty decent selection too, but it was nothing compared to Walmart when Walmart first opened.
Right.
I mean, Walmart had they spent a lot of effort and stuff. And of course that stuff has all been watered out and disappeared, and now you just get the absolute bottom
bare minimum.
It's nothing like it used to be. There's no care and give to it. And you see, like, I think that's because their philosophy as a store and corporation has changed. But I don't know. I could go fishing right now, guys. You want to go fishing?
A little night
Go catfishing.
Go night fishing.
Yeah.
I don't have my gear with me. I might have a pole in my trunk, but I'm not sure.
I got my poles in my trunk, but
there's a creek over here, but it says
don't
fish it.
So
It says don't drink the water either.
What is your favorite type of fish to try to catch if you're purposely going out?
Well, this time of night, I really like. I don't know. I really enjoy catching smallmouth bass out of a river. That's a lot of fun.
Wading.
I'll do some wading, but it's just so easy. Like I can, it's just. But I really enjoy, like, one place I really like to go is Monroe Reservoir down south and fish for walleye. That's a great walleye lake. The local reservoir out here is a really good walleye lake. They don't really seem to hit too much until it starts getting a little bit later in the year, but here in about another month and a half, they're going to really turn on.
Yeah.
So probably walleye. I like catching walleye a lot, but I like catching smallmouth bass too.
What's your favorite fish, Mikey, to try to go catch? Got a favorite fish?
For me,
Yeah.
I don't know.
No? Okay.
Goldfish crackers.
Bluegill,
Bluegill.
because that's about all I've ever caught.
Ryan?
I again, I'd have to say that black bass, anything from the black bass family, the largemouth. I want to catch a big one. I want to catch one that I have to struggle to lift up. I want that trophy.
Snag into like a 8, 9, 10 pounder.
I'm talking like 13.
Oh, you want
brother.
to? He wants really big.
I want a big.
You're gonna have
one.
to go south.
Yeah.
I want to pull a massive fish out on there. But really, as much fly fishing as I've done, I've never actually caught a trout on my fly fishing gear. I've got a lot of rock bass, a lot of smallmouth, a lot
Are
of.
there some trout streams?
We've
in the
gone
state?
we've gone down south. We've gone to like the trout release and stuff like that, and I've never been successful.
They're few and far between.
They really are, and so
Need to go out west. for
out
that.
west. That's on my bucket list. I would say
Up north, you know.
But I've never actually caught a trout on my fly fishing gear, and that's sort of something I'd like to do. Catch into a nice brown or a rainbow, and bring it all the way in. Kiss
Yeah,
it
that'd be
once and let
nice.
it
That'd be
go.
nice.
But maybe that's that kayaking trip we take one day down the Snake River, right, Jeff?
Yeah, I'd be down.
You and I.
Or go. I'd like to go catch grayling.
I have no idea what a grayling is.
You don't know what a grayling is?
Is it in my book?
No.
No, you have to look it up.
Did you look it up?
I looked it up. I've seen it before. They got a very large dorsal fin.
Very large.
Oh, okay.
They almost kind of look like a flying fish, almost.
I really, and we really haven't talked at all about like saltwater deep sea fishing,
Right.
At all.
I've never done it.
I have fished in the Gulf of Mexico, not very far out, but my uncle had a small boat, fished off his back dock. I don't know. It's not. I don't know. I didn't enjoy it as much. I guess is I don't know. To me, I guess there's something a little more. I don't know, earthy or mystical or something that touches more of a nerve with me doing the streams and the rivers and the ponds, you know, of the countryside than going out on the deep water, you know, and trying to you know, get that big trophy swordfish or something, you know, halibut or something like that. I don't know. I just
think it probably is our schema. It's the way we've been raised. I mean, it's not something we've ever really prized or prided ourselves for. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm with you. I mean, saltwater fishing doesn't necessarily appeal to me. I'm a catch and release kind of guy. And when you catch, you know, a 300-pound halibut, that's not really a catch and release situation.
Right, because you've worn them out so much, or if you even put them back, are they going to die?
Or you're I mean, you've invested thousands of dollars in this fishing trip. The least you can do is eat fish on the way home, you know?
Right.
So, yeah, that's not something I'd necessarily be interested in for that reason. I would love to be on a boat out in the ocean, but I don't necessarily want to fish off of it while I'm there. But
yeah.
I just think we started this with a question that went the different direction I thought it was going to go, Jeff. And I'm just going to say, is there ever a wrong way to go fishing? And I'm going to say no, as long as you're having fun doing it. Even if you're holding the spinning reel upside down.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, as long as you're outside and you're doing it, you're going to learn something. It's going to make you a better fisherman the next time. And you're going to not worry about whatever you were doing before.
Well, it's just one of those things. You can always have something to do, you know, and it's outdoors and it's fun and, you know, it's part of nature.
And you know what? People say the fish won't bite when it's raining. That's hard. The fish will bite when it's raining if you're throwing the right sort of thing. If you get the right situation.
Fish got to eat. They don't just stop eating.
Fish will rain when it's muddy, or fish will eat when it's muddy. Fish will eat when it's clear. Fish will eat when it's hot. Fish will eat when it's cold.
They got to eat.
Do they eat more in different times of the day? Sure. But really, if you're out there and you're enjoying what you're seeing and you're watching the birds landing on the trees around you, or just listening to the river gurgle over the old refrigerator that's stuck in the middle of the river, well, then that's fine. That's fine.
Right,
You're getting you're getting your money's worth, and you're going to be relaxed, and rejuvenated with a little sunburn on your forehead.
You might hook into something crazy.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you ever seen what do we call them? Humpback shad. We used to call them humpback shad.
Yeah.
They called drums, I guess, is what
Right,
they're
freshwater drums. Some people call them.
We catch one of those, man. We thought we hit the lottery. We'd be like,
Right.
"What is this prehistoric fish?"
Or a
So
gar.
we just put it in here. I've never caught a gar before.
Oh,
but
yeah, they're crazy. You ever
Yeah.
caught a gar?
No, I've never caught a gar. They're
Yeah.
pretty, I think, fairly protected in Indiana. There's
They just
shovel
look mean
nose.
and nasty.
They have in the pits down south.
the sturgeon.
No, not sturgeon. What is it called? They call them shovel nose.
I thought they were shovel nose sturgeon.
Is it shovel nose sturgeon? No, they're a prehistoric fish. They live in the pits down in southern Indiana. Let me see.
All right.
Where's the
Shovel nose sturgeon.
Yeah, it's not sturgeon. There are sturgeon in Indiana. They're protected.
That's what I thought you were talking
there.
about.
No,
Lake
it's
sturgeon?
not the sturgeon.
This thing right
it's
here?
The
Catfish?
Shovel nose catfish?
no
Well, those are the only two I'm seeing.
It's all the way in the back. You see.
paddlefish.
Paddlefish.
Yeah, those are in Indiana. Those are kind of a crazy, unusual fish. Prehistoric in nature.
Did you see that video? It kind of
Oh,
got tossed
okay.
around
Let me see.
Facebook for a while there
Paddlefish.
of that fish that they cut the head off and she was cleaning it and it kept flipping after the head was cut off.
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
For a minute, like it kept going.
right. They do that kind
And
of
they
stuff.
said
I mean,
they said what kind of fish it was, and they said it was some sort of prehistoric fish that, like, you could just it kept moving, like she was holding on to
fish
it.
do that, dude. Like
I've
it's-
seen.
But I mean, the head was gone, and it had been well into the cleaning process.
Well, see, that's what we when we used to clean fish. I mean, we'd get bass or whatever, and Dad would bring home bass over 14 inches or whatever, and we'd start to do the filleting process. There would be a fish that would only basically be a mouth and a central column because all the flesh to either side had
Right.
been taken and been gutted out, and it's still sucking air like it's breathing.
right.
Or the fins that aren't even attached anymore are still sort of looking like they're gaining
I've
traction.
seen a fish caught, filleted on the spot, and the fish put back in the water and it swam off
Really?
without any meat on the side of it.
Somebody was messing around.
Yeah, you can do that if you do it fast enough and cleanly enough. You know, you fillet it, pull it out,
Yeah.
fillet it, put it back in the water. The damn thing will swim off.
Says they're not necessarily the sharpest tool in the shed.
Why no?
Now it'll die, of course, but
Yeah, of course it'll. In fact, other fish will be eating it as it's still
instantly.
swimming.
Yeah. What a terrible, terrible life.
Did you see that there's a bald eagle swooped down, tried to grab a red salmon out of the water, and the salmon was big enough that pulled it down into the water,
And was swimming.
and then
Yeah, I
it
saw that.
started like swimming. It refused to let go of the salmon, and it was essentially swimming across the lake, dragging the salmon
They can
along with
swim.
it.
Eagles.
Yeah, it
They'll
was
use
pretty
their
cool.
wings as like.
Well, talking about fishing, that was one of the things that I really enjoyed. Your fishing license money, your hunting license money has been allowed our Department of Natural Resources to continue to try to reinvigorate our species of animals, the diversity of the species of animals in our area. So because of their protection and sort of maintenance, and it may be bloated. I don't know how we feel about that sort of government work being done, but we now have bald eagles here in the U.S. or back in Indiana due to their
Yep.
vigilance, and that's honestly neat.
It's only a matter of time before they're starting to like eat people's Yorkies out of their backyards and stuff.
I saw some last year just up on the
man, that
Wabash
would be
River.
funny.
right.
Yeah, and then
I would
everybody's going
lose
to
it.
complain. The red-tailed hawks, they're out of control anymore.
You think so?
Yeah.
They are everywhere.
But I tell you, and
There's nothing
raptors
wrong
in
with
general, turkey vultures.
Well, they're
when
not
I was a
raptor,
kid,
they're scavengers.
well, they're still considered a raptor. I believe.
No,
You know,
they don't. They're not eating any. They're not killing anything themselves.
Never used to see these.
They're the
birds
earthworm
of
of the
prey
sky.
like I
Earthworm
do
of the
now.
sky.
You know,
Well, that was
never saw
well,
it.
you grew up in the DDT generation, man. There's
80s. It was out of the. It wasn't used then. I don't know.
But you were still dealing with the repercussion of the soft eggs and so forth.
Now
so.
you got these red-tailed hawks flying around neighborhoods, it's all putting kids at risk.
What?
Kids picking up kids.
Kids at risk.
I will say I love that's my favorite kind of birds to watch. I'm a huge fan. I love watching those red-tailed hawks on the side of the power line.
I actually one time going fishing, me and a buddy of mine, we get down to where we're fishing. Actually, it was a stone quarry.
Is it Monroe?
Well, stone quarry is a
no.
very good place to fish.
Sure, it's deep, it's cold,
It's
it stays
deep,
there
it's
all year.
cold, it's relatively untouched. It's difficult to fish, so the fish there go to gigantic proportions. But we see this red-tailed hawk was watching us fish, so we caught a couple fish, threw it up towards the hawk sitting in the tree. Hawk flew down, and started eating him. We've like fed the hawk.
You should have done that like for 10 days in a row. Then had that'd been like my ultimate dream come true there.
Here comes Ryan's falcon story.
No. It's been an hour and 15 minutes of fishing, man. We don't have time for falcon story.
His falconry fantasy.
But yeah, I mean, I remember they tried to bring ospreys back, and really we don't have large enough bodies of water for ospreys to be
Right.
really functional. So I think the ospreys, for the most part, have moved on.
The crane.
Maybe to Brookville. Brookville might be large enough. Maybe Patoga up north might be large enough. But the three reservoirs that are here for flood control, they're not really large enough for an osprey population.
Has there been cranes that like around here for that long? I mean,
Cranes?
Yeah, the up in middle northern Indiana.
I
is
see
a
them on the White
wetland.
River all the time.
You talking about just great blue herons?
Herons, yeah.
Herons have been here forever, but there has been a pretty well resurgence of the sandhill crane. They're working.
So
really
every
hard.
once in a while you can hear them. You'll be outside and you'll hear this kind of weird sound. And if you look up, you got to really look up because they fly at a high altitude. You can see like a formation of cranes.
It's not a great blue heron that I saw.
Was it white?
I don't think so.
Okay, well,
If you see like a solitary large wading bird in the White River, like you see frequently, it's a great blue heron.
most of the time it's
Okay.
great blue heron.
Maybe it is.
Yeah.
But and their colorations vary between male, female, adult, juvenile, and so forth. But
Yeah, I guess it was.
they're very cool. I like watching them.
yeah, I watched one catch a pretty big sucker one time.
Really?
And, caught it sideways and then how it readjusted it so it got it head first. And then even after it got it in, I mean, the sucker was still, swimming around. So inside,
That was one of the things neat down in Florida. It's like I'd be fishing off the my uncle and aunt's house, their dock right there out on Tampa Bay area. And you'd catch, all these different types of fish, and literally I'd throw them up onto their, the deck area, and the cranes and pelicans, you'd toss them up in the air, and the pelicans open their mouth, and of course they'd catch them, and you'd see the fish flopping around down in there. But the cranes would go up, you'd throw them on the ground, and they'd go up and they'd take that beak and impale the fish, and then throw it up in the air and catch it in their mouth. So they were very, very proficient at what they did, to say the least.
Dirty beggars. Go catch your own fish. I'm fishing here.
Well, that's the thing, is once you start, I mean, it's just like one sees another, and the next thing you know, you're just surrounded by freaking birds. And I mean, they're not afraid to come up to you either. Like they're actually pretty bossy and impatient.
I have this image of then Doug like turning around like sword fighting with
they're
his fishing
dinosaurs.
pole.
They're dinosaurs.
Yeah, we're like no blue,
Get out of here.
no blue, back Delta. I'm watching you, Charlie.
Yeah.
You haven't watched Jurassic World, so you don't know what
No.
I'm talking about.
No.
Where you're like, I'm the alpha.
Stop.
No,
Yeah. No.
they are dinosaurs, Jeff. I'm with you.
They are.
100%.
They are. Clearly.
If you got fishing stories you'd like to trade, let us know on Facebook.com/Buffalo Brotherhood. If you'd like to follow Jeff Hansard on Twitter, you can at Jeff Hansard. No spider, just at Jeff Hansard.
Right.
If you want to follow Doug on Facebook, you can at Refried Evil. If you want to follow Mike Stoltz on Facebook, on Twitter, you can at Mike Stoltz. But that's not the Mike Stoltz that's on the show. That's the other Mike Stoltz.
That's Mike
At Fu Man 2.
That's
You're going to follow him at Fu Man 2. If you want to follow me, it's at Buffalo Cast. If you want to follow the show, it's at BOBcast Nation. Follow the show. Follow the show. Follow the show. Follow the show. If you're not following us or liked our page on Facebook, it's at Facebook.com/Buffalo Brotherhood. We are quickly closing into 1,000 likes. That is a huge milestone for us.
God. That's an awful picture of me. Third person on Google is me.
Is it really you?
Yeah, and it is a terrible picture.
It is.
Let's see.
It's
Let's see.
18-year-old Sleepy Mike. That I feel like I've seen that picture before.
MySpace.
Is it MySpace? I feel like
Yeah,
it's,
but look what's not too much further down. My
I saw
Twitter
the
picture.
podcasting picture. What happens if you search my
And
name?
then Julia is on there, my daughter.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The guy that I always run into is this Jeff Stoltz, Geoff, the actor.
Geoff.
He was in Bones and like all this other stuff.
Anyway, if you want to follow us on Facebook, you can. We're closing in at 1,000. Like, share the show, guys. Share the fishing show. If you got somebody that enjoys fishing or knows more about fishing than Jeff and I do and Doug does, that would be hard, honestly, to match.
It would be to
the
match
level of
that
expertise,
level of
because we could go so much deeper and so much on shore fishing versus boat fishing, so on and so forth. Just share the show with them, so maybe they'll be interested and they'll like the podcast as well. And next time we do this fishing part 2, maybe they'll be interested in being on the show with us. So you can do that. If you want to follow us directly at our home on the web, it is at the www.buffalobrotherhood.com. Do we have to say www anymore?
No.
Buffalobrotherhood.com.
This is BOBcast.
That's what I was going to say. Thanks, past me.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. Jeff, fun?
You're welcome. Yeah.
You want to do it again?
Good time. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. What do we do it next time on?
Man, I don't know.
All right.
Conspiracy Part